I didn't do the kidnapping, it was Peter. He was the one who took Chai away from Chai's parents. The dog had no say in this, and neither did the dog's mom and dad.
Then we take you and then adopt you.
And you become our child. Guys, do you see the level of Delulu I live with? Are you ready?
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain.
Ooh,
Lives in a pineapple under the sea. SpongeBob SquarePants. Are you ready for today's topic?
Yes, what is today's topic?
Okay, quick recap. Every week I will ask Peter a very random question that I feel like asking just cause. He doesn't know what the question is and we're just going to chat about it. That's it. So this week's question is, I don't know how to phrase it in a succinct way, but you'll get my feeling. Why is it okay to take an animal, like a pet, like our baby Chai, away from its parent? Chai is our dog, by the way. But if we did that to a human child, away from their mother, that's considered like a bigger concern. So it's like a moral dilemma, ethical dilemma. Because technically, I didn't do the kidnapping, it was Peter. He was the one who bought Chai and took Chai away from Chai's parents. So how this came up is I was on the toilet, as I do usually, watching a reel, and it's one of those reels where it's the POV, the mum looking at the dog, and the dog's giving side-eye, and it's like, when you realize your mom is just someone who kidnapped you from your actual mother at 8 weeks old. I'm like, damn, the dog was kidnapped. The dog had no say in this, and neither did the dog's mom and dad. So that's my question. Why is it okay? I think it brings into discussion ideas of like humans. There's multiple things. Humans as like a superior race, we're the most intelligent species on the planet. So we think. I'm sure there are some invisible species that are more intelligent than us that are watching us in this simulation that they're making us play. That's number one. And then the other things that come to my mind, I'm just throwing ADHD thoughts at you. The other thing was actually historically, humans did used to take other humans' kids away from them. Like for example, when the British settled in Australia, the native people, the Aboriginals, they took their children away from them and sent them to like certain schools and stuff. So at one stage it was considered like morally acceptable to do that. And I'm sure, like, we always reflect on history with hindsight. The people were like, how could you do that? But I'm sure at the time, those people thought they were doing the right thing to give like the kids a better future, right? That's like those people thinking they're giving the kids a better future. But you taking Chai away from Chai's mother, you were just like, I want this cute dog. She's really cute. Right now, she's not with us because she has been kidnapped from us by Peter's parents, who keep kidnapping my dog. And this is a discussion I have with you regularly. I'm like, whose dog is this? So maybe we have to get another dog.
You want another dog?
I'm actually considering it.
Are you going to kidnap a puppy from its mum at 8
No,
weeks old?
I'm going to adopt one off the street. I was going to do that until you called me out like that. I will find one on the street and adopt it that needs a better home. It'll just go walk around and go, that one. Anyway,
but
I've
the
been
dogs
thinking,
in Vietnam do not go around touching random dogs in Vietnam. They have rabies.
Oh, yes, forgot about that. Anyway, I've been speaking for a long time. Those are all my thoughts, which are very incoherent.
Those are a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, so...
So why do you think... there's too many thoughts. I don't know what you... said a lot of things.
Back to the original question, why is it okay for us to take a dog? It's like socially acceptable to take a dog away from its parent at a very young age. But if we did that to a human child, it would be considered like, it would be outrage.
Do you think it's because we do it because we think we're superior to other animals?
I think a big part is that. I think we do it just because we can. I literally, like, someone said humans are not... One of the biggest fears about AI is that intelligent species are not necessarily very nice to less intelligent species. And that is the fear about AI, that we think when AI is more intelligent than us, if we look at how humans treat other species, again, this is just like a general discussion. Like, we eat other animals, if there's like a mosquito, we'll try and kill it. Like generally, we're not the nicest to other creatures. I know there are some religions that are very nice to other creatures, but I think in terms of like the average person, how we're raised and stuff, it's like an ant. You don't think twice. Like, oh my God, it's an ant, kill it.
I think, okay. So I think my end thought is that humans are selfish.
Yes.
And how that relates to this, is like, when you were talking, I just went through this like long ass road.
I'm glad.
I think my end thing is humans are selfish, and how that comes to be connected to the original question, I think,
Doesn't matter because I agree. That's the end of the show. Okay,
is
goodbye.
that yes, we do things because we want to, but it's not like 100% bad. For instance, why do we wait? Why does almost the entire world say wait 2 months, 8 weeks before you can get the puppy? Everyone disagrees to get before. Like, why?
Because the puppy will die because it doesn't have its mother. I feel like you're right, it's still selfish. Because if not, the puppy's dead, you don't have a puppy.
Partially, but like, I don't think the puppy will die.
Well, no, does it not need its like mother's milk to survive? I don't know anything about puppies.
I don't know anything about baby puppies either. I assume they would need milk, but I don't think for 2 weeks. Because they start transitioning into like soft foods after like, I don't know, a few weeks, I assume.
Interesting. Oh, so do you think, is the point that you're arguing that's like the care period for the mother after which?
I suspect we are not breeders people,
We're not
but I think the key thing
experts.
to remember is that dogs and humans are different. Dogs have a shorter lifespan, which means they grow a lot faster and they develop differently to human babies, just in general.
Yes.
Right?
Someone made this point to me already when I raised this topic previously.
Oh,
And my rebuttal to it, in part, was, okay, if we say we take the baby at 8 weeks, the dog baby, but they age faster, 7 dog years are 1 human years? 8 weeks times 7 is what? It's like 42? No, my maths is really bad. What's 8 times 7?
56?
Yes. 56, right? Like 1 year. So it's like taking a baby when it's 1 year old. But I think the point you're making is like the maturity of animals is very different to the maturity of
Yes, you're assuming that
humans.
animals mature linearly to humans, even
And
though
there's the
that
same
whole donkey
emotional
thing is just like, they just took like 100 years and divided by like the dogs, how they lived.
Yeah. The emotional maturity of animals versus humans differs.
So I think what the 8 weeks is that I think even humans, when human babies are growing up, there's a certain period where they need like parental figures.
Mm.
They just need it for development and other reasons, I guess. I assume it's the same for dogs. There's a certain period, and I believe we humans have decided that period is around 8.
We decided for the
We
dogs.
decided for them. I'm sure it's like through lots of testing and all that process, but basically we decided for them, right? And I think after the 8 weeks, there's a certain period where if it's easier for them to adapt to a new environment. For I don't a few months.
Makes sense. Makes
8
complete sense.
to 13, 14, 16 weeks.
It's like a baby's malleability.
The malleability of the puppy, which means if you were to adopt a dog, that is the best period. Or not best period, but it's better to go before, like, I'm going to make up a number, 13 weeks. It's better to adopt them before 13 weeks than after, because afterwards it's a lot harder to adopt. For instance, it's, I think, a well-known fact that adopting from an adult dog that's in the pound,
and shelters, animal shelters
is a lot harder and more work. Yes, you're doing a very good thing, but be aware it can be very difficult, also because of the trauma that they endure.
Trauma, and they've already have past behaviors of how they respond based on previous training and things like that.
Yes.
Interesting.
So that's my theory, but again, it's related because we're selfish. We know, let's say that we know that up until 13 weeks, puppies are still developing, but we decided that after 8 weeks, it's safe enough to adopt a puppy
Yeah.
where they can live with us and form bonds, and that's fine. So we're like, we give you 8 weeks.
And then we take you from your mother.
And then we take you and then adopt you.
And you become our child. That makes sense.
I think
So I think
yeah.
no, the answer is it's not. There's no ethical reason. We're ultimately selfish as humans. And I think this stems back to our discussion, which we've had previously. And like, selfish has so many negative connotations attached to the word, but I think everyone is ultimately selfish, right? Even when we talk about someone doing a good deed for someone else, you only do that because you get something out of it, like the joy of
helping other people. Which is still a dopamine.
Dopamine. It's still motivated by the fact that you benefit in some way.
You enjoy it.
Which is not a bad thing. That's like people by nature. That's why we survive, right? Because you have to do things to protect your own self-interest. Even when you do something for someone else's benefit, there is an interest for yourself in doing so. Correct? Like when I am really sweet to you and take care of you as my partner, it's not because like, yes, I'm nice. Of course I'm nice. But it's because like I get joy from seeing you
like the gratitude
being taken care of.
Maybe like the gratitude from your partner, or seeing your partner happy makes you happy. You being happy is still a selfish reason.
So yeah, everything's selfish, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's just the way we exist. So when we say selfish, I don't think we mean it.
No, I think how we mean it is self-interest. Actually.
Self-interested rather than selfish, which is quite a strong.
You do things because it's self-interested.
It's in your self-interest.
Yes, in your self-interest.
Yes, I think that
rather
makes
than
sense.
Selfish. Maybe we're using the word selfish wrong, but I think self-interest is what we actually mean. You do things because it's in your self-interest.
Which is probably very similar to the word selfish.
But remember in high school English, emotive language, certain words have... What's emotive language again?
You didn't do very well in high school language.
I hated English. I was more of a math person.
Evokes emotion, and selfish evokes negative emotions.
Yes. So therefore, I believe self-interest is what we should use from now on.
Yes, humans are self-interested creatures. Yeah. So
arguably all of life is self-interested.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying our content, the best way you can support us is by subscribing.
This helps us make better videos for all of you.
Woo! So this was not a very complex topic, but pretty much we take animals away from their parents because we are self-interested.
Yes. And I think even even allowing them 8 weeks, the puppy 8 weeks with its mother, that's still self-interested because that's where their development is, how much development we think is required from them and the connection with their parents, so that it's not painful on us.
Yes, correct. Side tangent. So if humans are generally self-interested, which I think everyone is, what makes a good human versus a bad human? Like, this is like a complete side tangent, but it's like, why do we perceive like, I don't know, what Trump's doing to be bad or what this person's doing to be good? It comes down to like experience, personal experience, how you're raised and how you perceive the world, right?
It's like moral code, is what you're saying?
Yeah, if everyone is self-interested at the end of the day, I guess it's a different way of seeing the world. Rather than seeing the world as there are good people and bad people, you just see everyone as self-interested. It's just a different umbrella. Yeah, so there are no good and bad people. There are only self-interested people. Does that make sense?
There are, yeah, I think it's maybe bad people is when the self-interest your personal self-interest goes, you consider it above and beyond other people's self-interest, right? Because if you consider your own self-interest to be above and beyond other people's, that's inherently what we call selfish. You only care about yourself and not others, right?
This is gonna get really confusing, but are you ready? When you consider that your interests are above other people's interests, then you call them selfish. So, but aren't the people who don't consider their interests above other people's interests also selfish because they're fearful of the judgment that others will put on them should they put their interests above the interests of others? So they're fearful of the perception of being selfish, which is ultimately self-interested. Does that make sense? Think about like society, the judgment from others in society as weighing in on your equation of whether to do something is in your self-interest or not. And again, we're aligned that humans do things only in their self-interest, always. I think we agree with that, right? Whatever you do in life, it's always in your self-interest to do that thing. So if you decide not to put your interest above that of other people, so you're not classed as selfish, it's still self-interested in doing.
Or you do it for a reason, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yes, you do it for a reason.
Which I think is
reasons are always self-interested.
Which is when I think people would consider a good person, because let's say, I think what it is your self-interests align more with considering or are helping other people. We consider that a good person. But if your self-interests don't align at all with helping other people or considering them, we consider that a bad person.
Makes sense. That does make sense.
Or maybe actively injuring or hurting other people, we consider that a bad person.
Okay.
To the detriment of other people. Because what if you're just, let's say you're addicted to video games and you just all you do is stay at home and just play video games. We don't consider that a bad person. But if your self-interests involve actively harming or other people in some manner or form, physical, mental, etc., we consider that a bad person.
That's true. Okay, yes. So everyone is self-interested, but we can still categorize what is good and bad based on the impact it has on others. So when someone is self-interested but is like donates to charity because they get a high out of it, we're like, oh, they're helping other people. So
even if they get a high out of it,
we still consider that.
We can still consider that a good person
rather than going to steal from someone. Interesting. That makes sense. So self-interest can be broken down into good or bad, but I guess it's dependent on public perception. Or like external perception.
I think we come up with, I don't know if there's, because for instance, if you ask people who are like biblical fanatics, they would say there is no moral code that's outside the Bible. The Bible dictates everything. And what we're saying is useless because it's written in the Bible or something. I don't know. That's what I'm assuming. I'm not a theologist.
I feel like you could be a theologist. You're very wise.
No. What were we talking about?
You kidnapping Chai away from her parents, and pretty much you justified the whole story as to why it was acceptable for you to do it. I didn't kidnap Chai again. I am just Chai's adoptive father who loves her very much.
Also, another argument is that one, in the law, animals and pets are items, objects to be owned.
Yes.
They're not considered humans for good reason. That's number one. The law usually is supposed to reflect the people's morals.
Morals and beliefs at any given point in time. That's why laws change, but it's reflective of society at present state.
And how everyone thinks.
Yes.
What that also means is that these animals, puppies, are usually bred purposefully, usually, for the sale thereof. And an argument is that if you do not adopt these puppies, they would never be adopted and they'll be put in an animal shelter, which is arguably a worse home for them.
Oh, so tragic. Oh, so you saved Chai. Got it. Guys, do you see the level of Delulu I live with?
Excuse me.
Question, if you choose to bring a child into this world, Is that selfish? I guess it's a similar question. Bringing a child into this world. And you conceive a child.
Is it selfish?
I think it is.
Well, I think we can agree it's self-interested.
But I think society as a whole is what decides whether something is good or bad. And generally,
Bringing a
people
child into the world is considered a good thing.
A good thing, yes.
And actually, what determines what something is good or bad is actually determined by the culture or society that thing happens in.
Yes.
For instance,
which is based off your experiences and how you were raised and everything.
Yeah. For instance, multiple wives is considered bad in a lot of the Western world, but it's considered fine or normal in some parts of the world.
Correct.
It's not, and we would consider it bad. We're Western, so we'll consider it bad. Whereas those
Not
parts
that
would
we
consider
actually
it
do.
fine or good, right?
He's generalizing. I don't want to be bucketed with those people who consider it bad.
What is considered good or bad, it just depends on the society that it happened in, or not even happened in, just depends on the society or person that you're talking to.
That's true. So if we go back to the dogs thing, Western society, most people keep dogs as pets, but in other parts of the world, you might, dogs are treated as meat animals to be eaten. And I think, again, the laws and stuff change because of society and the world's perception at any given point. It's some countries have now outlawed it because dogs are more seen as more like companions now. So yeah, I think what this reminds me of is whenever we judge people in the world or we have an opinion or something that this person is good or bad, we often forget, and I think we feel those emotions very strongly because you're like, that person did that, that's terrible. But we need to be reminded it's really based on our subjective experience of how we've been raised and what we've been taught is right or wrong, which for every single person is vastly different. Yeah. And honestly, I think if more people took that approach to life, there would be less conflict. You don't need to agree with someone, I think. This is what I said last time to you. We don't need to agree with someone, but I think you should respect everyone. But I understand that some people, it's hard for some people because if someone has a opinion that's directly opposed essentially to your existence. For example, people who are homophobic and think we shouldn't exist.
I think
it's a bit
you
harder.
Can give them there is a certain level of respect that you can give, but that respect can be taken away if they don't give it back.
Correct, 100%.
That's what I believe.
Yes.
Because what do we call it? Everyone deserves by default a level of respect, but
if you don't choose,
what is it? That deservation? What is it? That
let's just make up this word. The deservation of that respect
can be taken away.
Yes. You cannot.
Respect is earned, not given.
But you just said. They have a base level of respect.
Yeah, because all humans earn by default, if you don't know them, blah, 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 a level of respect, but it can be taken away.
Okay, that makes sense.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Because that's how I function.
This whole conversation takes me back to when I was listening to that podcast, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling, which is J.K. Rowling was under so much heat for anti-trans comments, but then when you kind of hear her story, which is a different side of it, you just realize, what that made me realize is whatever conflict people are in, it's usually because people come from different backgrounds. People are not, again, everyone is self-interested. People are not being dickheads just to be dickheads. Some people are, but mostly people have come to arrive at their specific stance on a issue because of specific reasons. And yelling at them generally doesn't change their mind. But if you sit down and talk to someone, that's actually the best way. So conversations are the most powerful thing. What is it? It's good faith conversations. So you have the conversation without ill intent to understand. And when you seek to understand, that's when you understand and see more of the world and other people's perspectives.
Yes, this is what I mean by everyone deserves a level of respect just by default, but it can be taken away depending on how the situation goes.
Yeah, 100%. If someone comes to you and wants to speak, just have a conversation with you and you decide to yell at them, I don't think that person's going to want to speak to you anymore.
Yeah, yeah. For instance, the whole, is it related? Innocent until proven guilty. They deserve a level of respect, and then once you hear everything, make sure that you have all the information, you can change it up how you feel.
I had like 2 random, really ADHD thoughts, side tangents. Do you believe in the innocent until proven guilty general premise? Do you think it's a good? Boop. Do you think
I
it's
have
a good
no
thing?
reason to not believe in it.
Hmm.
What is your reason against it, or to not believe in innocent until proven guilty?
I don't know. No specific. I don't have a reason against it. It's just more. There are parts of the world where it's like guilty until proven innocent, and there are other and like depending on like the crime and things like that, there are different approaches to law. And again, law is governed by people, and people have come up with law. So, is it the best system? It could be, could not be.
It depends on the culture. I don't know specifically where it's not innocent until proven guilty, but I can think of examples. For instance, what do we call it? Public shaming, where media outlets falsely reporting something, and then they have the balls to retract what they said.
Yes, correct. So I think this extends. Yeah, for me, it's like extends beyond law. It's just. It's broader than law. I guess the question.
Yeah. Well, law is like a reflection of what society's
Yes.
feelings is supposed to be. In the Western world, democratically anyway.
Yes.
Very, I'm like, oh wow, okay. Our perspective of obviously law and culture is very westernized in a democratic, socialist, capitalist society. Very different to most of the world, actually.
Capitalist, and now that we live in a more socialist country, previously I think I was raised to be like democratic process is like it's the only way to govern. But now we live in a different country that's run by a different set of rules. It's like rather than being like this is not correct, I'm like, oh, I can starting to understand why different governance processes can still be successful. And like again, what your idea of success looks like is going to differ based on your background and where you come from. Like for democratic countries which we come from, like Australia, the idea of being able to vote and like freedom to choose is weighted the highest. Whereas in some socialist countries like Vietnam, it's like social peace and stability is ranked higher. And whether you value one of those two things is going to differ by person to person, but also be different based on the education and the system that you're raised in, what you choose. For example, I think Asian families, we value the family unit very strongly. Whereas from a Western perspective, having been raised in a Western country, like the independence is quite strong. So that's like an Asian versus Western culture difference that I've already noticed. Being raised as like a, what do they call like a two culture kid? Are we dual culture kids?
Never heard of it.
We're raised in like Western and Asian culture. This has been a huge side tangent from dogs being kidnapped. But yeah, any other thoughts based on anything we've said today? This is the most ADHD conversation I've had in a while, but I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It has been intellectually stimulating, riveting, wonderful.
Can we draw parallels from adopting a puppy from its breeders to, dare I say, adopting a child who doesn't have parents from the orphanage? As in both cases, are you not trying to give them a better future?
Possibly that could be said. The dog ends up with usually a more comfortable life than if it had to live in, what's the alternative, live in the wild?
Or with the breeders, then it's, yeah, like the adoption center that we talked about.
Adoption center or like the dog in the wild. That's what I'm thinking. Like Chaya here, she sleeps in our bed. She gets baths.
Eats a lot of meat.
She gets like good quality food, which is better than like the street dogs, which eat out of trash cans and things like that. So possibly that might be our saving grace, that our intention is to give. Do we ever do things? Okay, I was like, do we ever do things that are not in the interest of animals? Yes, we kill them. And like, again, the mosquito one is like the easiest example where like you don't even think for a split second whether you should not kill the mosquito. But to be fair, the mosquito is irritating you. But there's an example. So I think there are some parallels that can be drawn between adopting a child and adopting a dog. And I think the point you're trying to make is that you give them a better life.
But also I'm unsure because I don't know anyone who's adopted, but how much of
We do know
the self-interest of the person who's adopting, how much of it is they want to give that baby a better life versus self-interest of wanting a kid?
Again, I think we've decided that self-interest is not necessarily a bad thing. In most cases, people would say you adopted a child, that's a good thing. Because of society's view that...
They've decided that that's a good thing.
Yes, society's decided that's a good thing. We do have a very close friend who's adopted. And they're like pretty happy with how they were brought up and everything.
Yeah, but I mean, someone who's adopting.
Oh, adopting.
Who adopted a baby.
Oh, yes.
And then asked them what their thought process was through adopting.
My auntie essentially adopted, like fostered, still fostering. Wanted a child, couldn't naturally conceive one because had cancer before. I think a lot of it is like self-interested in that wanting a child, but at the same time, knowing that adopting, they are giving the child a better life. If they don't have that self-interest, it's like almost alignment of interests here. If they don't have that self-interest to do that, then they wouldn't do that, and also a child is left without a home. So in some cases, it's like 2 and 2 align. So, woo, you have a win-win situation. Yeah.
So it's a win-win situation to adopt our dog.
Yeah, and I think what I'm learning from this conversation is that the world is so much more complex and there are so many more inputs for why things happen. Because we could go down a whole another rabbit hole of like, why do children end up for adoption? And I think that will show us a completely different perspective of the world and like what causes the situations there.
Or like, should you even have kids? Is that self-interested?
That's another philosophical
Is it selfish
debate.
to have kids?
Is life, like, what is the point of life? If we keep having kids, then there's just more life. What if life ends? What's the difference if life ends versus if there is no more life versus there is life? That's a huge other philosophical debate. Do you understand what I mean? Like, what is the fundamental difference if humans didn't exist anymore and the world didn't exist anymore versus the world existing?
Yeah, what's the point?
What is the point? And folks, as Peter always says, sometimes there is no point. It's about the friends you made along the way.
About the friends you make.
I think my question has been answered. So in summary, humans are ultimately self-interested creatures and society kind of determines what's considered good, bad, or acceptable. And in this case, we have determined as a society that it is acceptable to take a baby doggy away from its parents, just as recently some countries are deciding it's no longer acceptable to eat dogs because they're considered companion creatures. Yeah.
And maybe it's totally possible in 100 years, we decide it's not okay to take baby doggies away from their parents. It's just whatever society decides is right, wrong, good or bad at that point in time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been a riveting chat. That was not, I thought the outcome would just be humans are selfish, we're bitches. And that was it, but that's actually a much more logical conclusion.
All right, see you guys next time.
See you guys next time. Thanks for watching to the end of this video, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. He forgot his line. If there's anything you guys want us to talk about, please leave it in the comments below.